This is Morning Report. Well, on election night, Bill English may have been forgiven for thinking he'd won the election. He ended up with 44.5% of the vote, but now finds himself settling into a period in opposition, and he joins us now in the Auckland studio. We are live streaming this interview too on all our usual platforms, so log in there if you want to see this interview. Good morning to you, Mr. English.
Morning, Guy.
What sort of opposition are you going to be?
Oh, it's strong, organised, focused, and arguing for what New Zealand doing well. You know, building on the strength that New Zealand's earned over the last 9 years, and making sure this government doesn't fritter that position away.
A positive opposition or an opposing opposition, a negative opposition?
Well, we're going to be critiquing the government and criticising them because they've got policies that won't work that well. But positive about what can be achieved for New Zealand, because that's the benchmark here. The benchmark here isn't, we believe, what the government has set out to do, which is indicate the economy is going to slow and not too much can be achieved. We think New Zealand's on a track with confidence and energy, and it's their job to build on that, not fritter it away.
Are you going to reorganise your opposition, your party, and have a reshuffle and change the portfolios?
I think initially we will focus on using the knowledge we have, because it's quite detailed and intensive from our time in government, to hold the government to account at this stage, and there'll be opportunities for, obviously for changes later. OK, I want to look at a couple of MPs this morning, one out and one in. Todd Barclay, firstly, no charges laid there. Do you consider that the end of the matter? Well, it is the end of the matter. Did it hurt you? Oh, look, I don't know. I don't think that never that big in the public mind. It was a very unfortunate set of circumstances, just a personal dispute that got out of hand. But it's now been thoroughly looked at twice by the police, and the matter's over. OK. I want to also look this morning at your MP, Jian Yang, who remains in the caucus. What responsibility is he being given this term? Well, that's yet to be determined. What current responsibility does he have? Well, he's been a backbench MP on attending select committee and doing his constituent work, particularly for the Chinese community. So he hasn't had designated responsibilities, and at the moment we're working through the process of opposition spokespeople. Is it true that he spent 15 years working with the military intelligence apparatus of the Chinese government? Well, that'd be a matter best to address to him if that about exactly how he'd define what his past career has been. Well, what is your understanding? You're the leader of the party. You've been the Prime Minister all of the year. What is your understanding? Is this statement true? He spent 15 years working with the military intelligence apparatus of the Chinese government. Is that your understanding? Well, he has been open about his description. Whether he'd use that or not is a matter that you would need to talk to him about. Well, what is your understanding? Well, look, our understanding is that he has now had officials looking at the issue of whether he met the requirements for citizenship, and it appears that is the case. There's been no problem with the way he obtained a citizenship, which is now quite a number of years ago. When he became a National Party candidate, he declared his background. He was open about that. So you knew that he'd spent 15 years working with the military intelligence apparatus of the Chinese government? Well, he was open about his background. Did you know that, though? Well, look, there'll be an issue over whether that is a completely accurate statement. Well, I'm giving you the chance, mate. You tell me, is it right or not? Well, look, he worked at universities. He's described some of those activities. It appears that he did have some connection to military intelligence. He was open about that. Did you know that as leader of the party? What's that? Did you know that he'd worked with the military intelligence apparatus of the Chinese government and taught spies? Well, I don't necessarily accept that characterisation of it, but the party was well aware of his background when he became a candidate. And of course, the test of this is, as a member of Parliament, has he carried out his functions? And the answer to that is yes, in quite a satisfactory way. And of course, in his community, he's well respected. So you're comfortable with his background and the disclosures he's made about it? Yes, we are. Did the SIS investigate him? Well, that's a matter that I won't discuss because I don't discuss operational matters of the SIS.
If they hadn't investigated him, I would... Well, let's try this. Have the SIS investigated you?
That'd be an operational matter with the SIS. I'm not going to comment on it.
I put it to you that if they hadn't investigated him, you'd be able to tell us.
As I said, it's an operational matter for the SIS and I'm not going to discuss it.
Do you know whether the SIS investigated him?
Well, I'm not going to discuss it.
Well, you haven't rejected claims that have been made in the media that the SIS indeed did ask questions about him.
Well, that's just a semantic game and I'm not going to discuss it.
Did he teach spies?
Well, that's a matter for him to really to describe as to whether he did or he didn't.
Well, what is your understanding?
Well, look, the question here is, is it the case that for every member of Parliament we're going to take a view about the appropriateness of them being a representative according to their whole CV? Now, in the case of Dr. Jiang, he came to New Zealand. He's become a citizen quite some time ago, and from our point of view, he's done his job as a member of Parliament. He has a history which has involved interaction with apparently with the Chinese intelligence and military services. We have people in Parliament who've been involved with the New Zealand intelligence and military services.
Are you telling me there's no difference?
Well, we're talking about a New Zealand citizen here.
Yeah, we're talking about someone who worked for the military apparatus of the Chinese government, though, aren't we? You're saying
who is a New Zealand citizen, a member of Parliament, who's functioned in an appropriate way representing his community in the Parliament. That's the situation as it sits.
Why was he removed from the Foreign Affairs Select Committee? But people get moved around in select committees. I can't actually. Was there no connection between what we've been talking about and that?
Well, I simply wouldn't want to make a comment without knowing exactly what happened, and I don't know what happened there.
Can you tell me whether there was a connection between him being removed from that select committee and these background issues?
I can't because I don't know for sure.
You got no recollection at all about whether there was a link there?
Well, as I said, I can't comment because I don't know for sure.
But you do know something about this, though, don't you?
I know about Dr. Jiang, and I know there's been a lot of discussion about him.
Can you really tell me that there was no connection between him being removed from the Foreign Affairs Select Committee and his background?
What I'm saying is I can't comment on that because I can't say for sure.
Do you have any ongoing concerns, or do you have full confidence in this Member of Parliament?
Well, we have no reason to believe that the way he's conducted his role as a Member of Parliament is questionable, and issues around that have not been raised. I mean, this is all about what happened when he was in China, the issues that have been raised in the last few days. No one has raised questions in an obvious way about his behaviour in New Zealand as a New Zealand citizen.
You've got full confidence that he's told you everything and that you have full confidence in him as an MP?
Well, he is a New Zealand citizen, has been for some time.
I know that.
He's a Member of Parliament.
I'm just asking you, do you have full confidence in him as an MP?
Yes, I have no reason to not have confidence in him as an MP, and no one's raised one.
OK. Just finally, because we're going to go after this interview to Andrew Little, who's the new Minister for Pike River. You were quite adamant as a government that this wasn't a decision for politicians, that these were heavy safety concerns and that manned entry was not something you wanted to contemplate.
That's not correct. What we always said was the decision has to be made according to the law. That is, someone takes responsibility for the safety of the people who go in there, and that Mr. Little can't get round that. Someone has to take responsibility under our law of New Zealand for the people who go into Pike River. We never said it shouldn't be done. It wasn't our position to say that. What we said is that the people who had the opportunity to do it, that was Solid Energy, they decided not to proceed with.
So they're going to set up a new entity so that someone does take responsibility? Because you're saying from a governance perspective, as a director, right, you are responsible for that.
Yeah, either that or they're going to have to pass law to exempt this workplace from the requirements that apply in every other workplace in New Zealand.
So in short, because we're going to go to him shortly for him to answer this, but what problems do you foresee the Labour-led government having in manned entry to Pike River?
Oh, the problem is how to get round the law. I mean, our health and safety law was tightened considerably because of Pike River. The Labour Party were strong advocates of that. And so now they have to find a way, and they may be able to do it, but it will be a challenge, either find people who are willing to take responsibility, so they'll have to create some other entity and put some people on it, and that's possible, who are willing to take responsibility under the law, or exempt the workplace. So those have always been the choices, and changing the government hasn't changed the choices.
Thanks very much for your time. That's the opposition leader of the National Party, Bill English. It is now 12 minutes to 8.
Well, a chronic shortage of people training to become...
Sadly, this trend has been happening for a little while now, and we have been attempting to signpost to whoever will listen, really, that there's a big problem on the horizon with the average age of a technology teacher being rapidly approaching 60 years old.
He says the future of trades training in schools is now at stake.
We're going to be in a situation where it takes several years to attract and train these people, and there's already some schools which are actually having to close workshop classes because they just can't find staff.
Secondary Principals Association head and Pakuranga College head Mike Williams says things are now critical.
We are all very worried. We live in fear that one of our teachers is going to come in and say, I've decided to retire. Or for those in Auckland, our biggest concern is they come to us and say, I can no longer afford to live in Auckland. I'm moving to somewhere else where I can cash up my Auckland house and buy a mansion somewhere else and change my lifestyle.
The main barrier to tradespeople moving into teaching is the requirement since 2002 for them to have a degree, something most do not have. Only Waikato University makes an exception, offering a 2-year course to those without a degree. Anybody living outside of Hamilton is faced with having to spend 4 years out of the workforce while they train, not an attractive prospect for somebody earning good money as a builder. Mike Williams says this needs a rethink.
The pathway to come in from the trades into teaching has pretty much been stopped. I think we need to, in the profession, look at the workforce. How do we get these people in? What's stopping them coming? Let's take some of the roadblocks out.
Massey University's senior education tutor and former technology teacher Paul Turner says there should not be a requirement for tradespeople to have a degree before he's allowed to train them to be a teacher.
If we're going to have this as a rigid expectation, we're just not going to have these teachers. Well, they're not there now. I mean, you can go onto the Education Gazette website today and you'll see far more vacancies than there are graduates coming through.
Paul Turner says this issue needs to be tackled urgently by the new Labour-led government if it has any hope of implementing its Kiwi Build policy.
If we're talking about 100,000 houses needed to be built in 10 years, that's great, but and that's not counting all the other houses that are going to be built. There's a real demand. I mean, it's as simple as that if there's opportunities here for students, we should at least give them that chance to take that opportunity.
The new Education Minister, Chris Hipkins, was not available to be interviewed on this story. For Morning Report, ko Jian Yang tēnei.
9 minutes to 8. Spotted traffic news this morning in Auckland. There's been a crash on the northern motorway after Otea Valley Road on-ramp. And that's blocking the right lane city-bound. Drivers being asked to pass with care. Also delays expected there. And also this morning on the southern motorway, a breakdown blocking the right lane southbound by the Gillies Ave off-ramp. Drivers being asked to merge left and also to expect delays in that area too. Well, let's get back now to Pike River, and Labour's Andrew Little will be meeting with Pike River families within the next week to discuss plans for re-entering the mine. Andrew Little is in the Wellington studio with me. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what is on the agenda specifically for this meeting with the families?
It's really a chance to hear from them about their expectations, consider some of the advice, the technical advice that they've received, share some of the advice that the government has, and then start to work out what a plan looks like about trying to get manned re-entry. OK, so the situation is that there's going to be an unmanned re-entry before the end of the year? Well, the briefings I've had indicate that, yes, the previous government's plan was unmanned re-entry. It was based on a technology or a device that certainly hasn't been built yet and may not have been even kind of designed yet. A prototype is to be designed, and it's going to be a bit like a transformer, a bit like Optimus Prime. You drop it down a hole above the mine, and it bursts into some of the other sort of creation, and it will explore the mine. It is. Look, I'm yet to see the full kind of detail of that, but the way it's been described to me is I don't even think there is a plan, actually. So the opportunity to meet with the families is an opportunity to start talking about what realistically can be done to meet their aspirations, to do everything that can be done to see whether there are any human remains left in the drift.
So are you even going ahead with this planned unmanned entry, or are you just going to sideline that and go straight for the manned one?
I'm waiting for some more advice on the specifics about what actually has been, what the instructions are to the inventor or whoever is developing it.
But if something hasn't been designed, it hasn't been built yet, it seems unlikely you're going to get in there in the next few weeks.
Exactly. Well, I don't think we'll get there in the next few weeks anyway. If we are to have successful entry, it'll be some months away. It'll be early part of next year, maybe March, April. But I do want to be very clear. I was surprised to hear that the idea about an unmanned entry is to use a prototype device that is yet to be built. That looks to me like that a pretty shaky foundation on which to give a reassurance to the family that something practical is being done to get entry to the mine.
And when you're talking about March, April, you're talking about possible manned entry at that stage?
That would be correct, yes. I mean, look, there are, as I think the leader of the opposition acknowledged, of course there are risks, and the previous government said that. The advice I've got says, all the way through, says, look, actually a manned entry is technically feasible. There are risks, and it's just a question about mitigating those risks. But no one has said this is completely impossible and we should never contemplate it. It is about having a good discussion about it. And I think the most important thing right now is involving the families in that decision in a way they clearly haven't been before.
OK, but on this score, is it clear to you now that you've had these briefings, now that you are the minister in charge of this, is it clear why the national government had the concerns and wouldn't go in with a manned entry?
Their concerns were the natural concerns that anybody would have for an enterprise like this. There are risks. Of course there are going to be risks. But what the advice I've received says is that these risks are known and quantifiable, and there are ways of mitigating most of these risks. The biggest risk is the risk of rockfall, according to the advice I've received, and there are ways of mitigating that. And so I think it's about being open with the families about the advice that is there, talk to them, talk to their experts about it. The primary thing I want to make sure happens is that the families are involved in the decision making all along the way.
Sure. It comes down to health and safety law as well, though, doesn't it? So who is going to take personal responsibility for the people going into the mine if there is to be a manned entry?
Yeah, so there's look, in the end, a decision maker will be responsible. There is
Are you going
involved.
to be responsible?
Look, we're working out the way that will happen now. Like Solid Energy is legally in control of the mine at the moment. They kind of disappear off the face of the earth about March next year. So we have to put in place another entity that is going to take responsibility for this type of operation and work out where legal liability lies.
Okay,
and the question will be whether the minister, myself, takes responsibility or whether you kind of give that to an independent third party.
But that's something you may take on?
Yes,
okay.
I'll have those discussions, but my inclination is actually this is now a political matter. It requires political decision-making and political impetus. Actually, a minister should take responsibility for it.
And so you think it would be most appropriate for you to do that? You're just taking advice on whether you definitely will or not?
Yes, correct.
OK, is this something that's definitively going to happen after the end of Solid Energy? It goes into liquidation, I think, in March next year, thereabouts. Right. So is this going to happen just after that point?
I guess this is the sort of planning we need to do to get all the ducks in a row, get the risk assessment done for what is involved in a manned re-entry, and it will take longer, I suspect, than the time that Solid Energy will be in existence for. So that's why we have to prepare for an alternative to Solid Energy being in control of and legally liable for the mine.
So that then also means, in terms of how this new entity is set up, are you going to have to pass some kind of law to exempt this entity from health and safety law to actually mean that people can re-enter?
We will almost certainly need legislation to set up the entity. Whether we have legislation exempting that entity from the law, I mean, at the moment, in the previous Parliament, I sponsored a private member's bill that did exactly that for Solid Energy. But we'll have further consideration of that issue as we do the preparation and as we put the plan together.
As a member of the Labour Party, as a former unionist, how comfortable are you essentially passing some sort of amendment to get round health and safety law?
The reason why I proposed it when we were in opposition is because Solid Energy seems to be saying there is a risk here, and therefore we're simply not going to do anything that gives rise to that risk, which I thought was unreasonable. I've been involved in plenty of risk assessment exercises and health and safety exercises where you know that there is stuff that carries risk, but you work out ways to mitigate that risk. Now, if we do all our planning and we set it up right and we get good quality risk assessment, take the advice from world-leading experts as we know are available, we may not need to do that the risk is manageable and known, and you do that.
Will you do that if you have to? If you have to do that, and that is the only way you can essentially get round this and get people back into that mine, will you do it?
I will leave that as an option available to us, yes.
And that's something you're completely comfortable with?
Yes.
Why?
Because I think in this particular instance, with this health and safety disaster such as Pike River mine tragedy was, these families were promised that everything that could possibly be done would be done. That hasn't happened yet. And yes, there are risks associated with it. And I think there is now an obligation for us as a government, having worked with those families up to now, to actually discharge that promise that was made to them.
Andrew Little, thank you very much for your time. Just approaching 8 o'clock now on Morning Report.
And in this hour, former Assistant Director of the FBI is with us to talk about today's arrests in Washington, D.C.
A ban on log burners in Timaru comes into force, but not without significant opposition.
We'll speak to the chairman of the European Parliament's Trade Committee. Dunedin's councillors vote on measures which clamp down on freedom camping in the city there. And we'll also have more on Kevin Spacey and the accusations of sexual harassment and him countering those, or including the fact that he's come out as gay. He's come under heavy criticism for that this morning as well. All that coming up before we leave you at 9 this morning.